Most memorable one I had, there was a guy, he'd been in the industry for many years, didn't like training, didn't like trainers, knew everything. So I asked the girl to start crying because his sales technique was really old-fashioned, as in, I know best, you're going to do what you're told, and you're not going to leave here without buying a car off me. So he's a bit of a dinosaur. So I asked the girl to be fairly moderate, and then when he started being demanding and domineering, which I knew he would be, burst into tears.
You used to train people in these
Yeah.
dealerships, or I guess what would you call it? Car companies, not dealerships.
Car dealerships, yeah. In the UK, it's a different setup than over here. So a lot of the car companies have more training control over the dealerships. By that I mean, if you want to sell our cars, you have to have it to be a certain standard, and to be a certain standard, you need to attend and attain these standards within these training modules, workshops, from a day to a week's training with the same trainer.
How do you get the job? Because I always wonder, like, people, I could just say I'm a good coach, but like, why would they pick me to train someone? How did you end up getting this guy can train us?
Well, uh, it's quite weird, as you said. Getting into that is who you know. I started in the industry actually being an actor. I had no previous experience of being an actor, but a friend of mine was involved in a launch company that launched these cars, and they said, "Well, we need somebody to stand in to be a customer, and this is your role. You're objective customer. You're a nasty customer. You're a nice customer." And it's training the salespeople to react to that in real time, whilst they're launching a car as well. So I did that, and the person who owned the company saw some potential in me and basically trained me up.
Wow.
So within 2 or 3 years of being trained and that, I started developing courses and writing my own courses for different, it's probably more than that actually, about 12 years doing the launches. In Europe, you have big launches, car launches, and you'll have someone like me walking around the car saying, giving you the specifications, how to overcome objections, that sort of thing, what's great about the car. And then there's different driving jobs within the launches, which I did a few, but didn't do a lot. So therefore, you take the guys around and show them dynamically what the car will do. And from there, I evolved into delivering training courses for dealer principals, sales managers, salespeople, after sales managers, after sales receptionists. And then I started writing courses for different companies. And when I left, I was writing courses, an awful lot of courses for a company called Renault, and delivering those courses, and obviously with Nissan as well, and some courses with Ford, doing some of their launches as well. So yes, it was going away from home on a Sunday and basically coming back late on a Friday. Working from home was just writing the courses, but delivering the courses was another thing.
Yeah, I remember that life. I remember I was every second week I was away a whole week. But I'd be curious on the role play thing. I mean, people turn their nose up at it, but I think essentially you're conditioning them to react in the right. When a stimulus comes, you give them a way to deal with that stimulus. And we used to go really hard on it. Like one time in the morning, they'd pretend to be like a mom with kids next to them and pulling on your pad, like, "Mom, mama." Like we went a bit far with it, just so you're really prepared. But like, how do you get into character? How do you present yourself as the best role? What was your strategy?
Well, I wasn't particularly good at it. I was quite good at the arrogant know-it-all going in. I felt that was quite easy to do for me at the time. Bear in mind, I was a lot younger and probably a bit more stupid. But we used professional actresses that could cry on cue. When we had objections with, "I don't want to do this, it's not real life, I wouldn't do this normally," and role play does one thing. What it does, it puts you out of your comfort zone. And when you're out of your comfort zone, the majority of the time you do what you do, not what you think you do. So the role play is really about bringing out your behaviors under a certain situation. And the really critical thing is the feedback you get from the customer, i.e. the actor, and also the trainer and the observers. So you have to set it up so the feedback is honest, not overcritical. A couple of times people pile in and you have to go, whoa, hang, no, that's not what we're here. We're trying to look for improvements. But it's really critical to get the feedback honestly and in proportion to what they've actually done. So you don't want to wreck someone's confidence. And that's where you need to really judge as a trainer when you go to the actor before they come in the room. Okay, this guy's a 5, meaning he's rock solid, he knows his stuff, he needs to be challenged quite vigorously. Or this guy's really nervous, new to the industry, new to the position. Let's go steady for a 2 and see how it plays. And if he's quite confident, you can notch it up a little bit. So, yeah, I think the most memorable one I had, there was a guy, he'd been in the industry for many years, didn't like training, didn't like trainers, didn't like the concept, knew everything. So, yeah, I asked the girl to start crying because his sales technique was really old-fashioned. It was quite a technique as in, I know best, you're going to do what you're told, and you're not going to leave here without buying a car off me. So he's a bit of a dinosaur. So I asked the girl to be fairly moderate. And then when he started being demanding and domineering, which I knew he would be, burst into tears. So he did. Oh, well, she did. And he was like, I said, well, handle it. How would you do it? And he said, that's not realistic. I said, has anyone burst into tears when you've been selling them a car? He went, oh, yeah, but that's not really. I said, okay. So maybe you should look at your technique and maybe your empathy when you're talking to people. So he gave us really good feedback, actually. I think it opened our eyes to how people see him, not just how you see yourself. So I think role play is really quite important in sales.
What's interesting, so I was having a in-depth chat with a client because I'm just trying to crack this whole insurance thing, and it's from the marketing side, trying to make them aware of their own immortality, helping them acknowledge, you're not in the sales process, you're not doing that. But the best type of client that comes through is the one that has seen something happen, either to themselves or others, that has identified that, hey, this is really important and this could happen. So it's actually suddenly an acknowledgement of the problem. So I'm just curious in terms of applying that same principle of now he had this arrogance, but you broke away the shell, so he had the willingness to admit there's a problem so he could fix it and then valued it. What do you actually think about in terms of identifying the real need or the real problem in a prospect?
Well, I think the sales process starts from the beginning, whether what you're talking about is someone who's had a bereavement, had lost a job, or had a serious illness and couldn't work, and so they can see the consequences of not having insurance. So that's what I would probably class as a distress purchase. They're doing it because they feel they need to, they have to, because of X, Y, and Z. And then you've got the ones that want to explore the possibilities of getting themselves the best cover. So if you go back to what's happening in the country at the moment, there's a cost of living crisis. The minister this morning said the waiting lists on the public health system is horrendous and it's getting worse because there's no finance going in there. The coverage of non-pharmac drug coverage, which not a lot of people understand, is quite horrendous as well compared to other countries like the United Kingdom, for instance, and even Australia. What you can get over there on the public purse compared to what you can get over here. So lots of people realise that if you need to finance your own medical, for instance, it can cost literally your house if you want these non-pharmac drugs, and GoFundMe cases as we see on a weekly basis. So it's quite a fine line between scaring someone to have insurance and pointing out facts. So I'm definitely of the method of being very matter of fact. I tell them I'm the what if person. So I'll be asking you what if questions. And I ask the question and then I just let them think about it and give me the answer.
It's kind of like an agitation. It's like you got to be careful to not agitate them where they close off. I went really deep on it. I went how do people respond to like challenges in life, or how do they navigate problems and whatnot? And then I started creating an archetype of the different types of people: the avoidant one that won't acknowledge it, the rational, logical one, the over emotive one that feels overwhelmed. If you were to impart the knowledge that you sort of do intuitively, in terms of communicating, I imagine, or maybe you've built it over time and it's not intuitive at all. But how would you develop the skill of identifying the way a person wants to be sold to?
That's easier said than done. When I was training people back in the UK, it was a case of, you're not in the real world. You're not in the real world. And then occasionally I'd phone people up, their clients or whatever, and do a role play over the phone. And they said, well, how do you do that? So, well, this is the process. And the process, really, there's an old thing in the car industry. You've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them accordingly. Because I think a lot of people, when they've got the knowledge and the enthusiasm of a product, they want to impart that information to other people without really understanding what information the other person needs. So a lot of people, I know it's an old saying, a lot of people listen with the intent to reply, not with the intent to understand. And there's an awful lot that goes on in all industries. I'm just listening a little bit, so I've got, right, I know where you are, and then I'm going to jump in to prove how great I am, instead of listening to the whole story. And normally the whole story has a bit on the end that's the bit that's really concerns the customer or the client. And it's listening for that bit and saying, okay, so and summarizing back. So from what you're saying is this and this is a particular concern about you. So if budget was an issue, we really need to concentrate on that. And that's if they're open. There's a lot of, as you said, the avoidance people. It won't happen to me. I've got parents that'll help me out. I've heard that a few times. So your parents are really rich? Yes, they are. So, okay. And I'm thinking, do you really think it's really fair to ask your parents for a couple $100,000 if you need non-pharmac drugs to elongate your life or cure you of some of the diseases? I'm sure they wouldn't mind. As a parent, I bloody would. And on that note, my daughter came over a couple of years ago, and the first thing I did was get her insured. Got a trauma cover and medical cover, and now she's starting to work. I'm looking at income mortgage cover for her. So, and I'll be paying for that because I know if it happens, I'll be paying for it anyway. So I might as well get insured.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, so the avoidant, you just go to the parent. Oh, that's right, I'll talk to them. But you know that'll work. But there's something like it. This relates to objections, I think, as well. I think the old objection handle model that I was taught, I think, is fundamentally broken, which is agree with whatever they say, relate in some way, and then tell them why they're wrong, and then give them an impulse to get them to close. And fundamentally, all you're doing is invalidating their identity. So they might agree in the moment, but they won't like you in the end. So I always think if I'm ever trying to solve an objection, I try to understand why I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we disagree, my only exploration is to understand their perception, which by you asking will unravel and we all converge on the truth, which could be I was wrong, they were right, and we get close to the truth. But the challenge is you're not actually confronting their identity. You're just collaboratively trying to find the truth together as opposed to fighting their resistance where they don't actually feel good about it. Like in the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, there's no right or wrong. In an argument, there's only someone that feels wrong.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I think today's society is so polarized that if you disagree with anyone on anything, it's I don't like you because I don't like your opinion. Instead of saying, okay, let's have a discussion and see where we've got common ground. But that's another story. But when we talk about objection handling,
We can open that can of worms if you want.
No, I'm not opening that can of worms at all. But objection handling is, I think you need to understand that most of the time, the first objection you hear is not the one that's deep founded. It's just whatever they say So, okay. And you're quite right. The old version would be, so if we could do this, what's stopping you going ahead? And that's quite manipulative. But yeah, empathy is a real big thing. If you can show empathy and really understand, put yourself into the other person's position, because a lot of the people I'm talking to at the moment want to reduce their costs, but not their cover. So it's quite easy to reduce people's costs. You just give them worse cover on with a different company. That's easy, but I've never done that, and I never will do it, because you have to be able to justify why you're moving someone. Nowadays, it's not enough just to be on cost, unless they really, really understand the product and what they're losing going forward. But yeah, I agree with you. If someone's got a fundamental objection, it depends on the person, because I suppose, you know, the old saying, treat other people as you want to be treated. Most people would agree with that. I don't, to be fair, because I want to be treated in a certain way as a business. In a business transaction, I want to have this conversation with you. But my daughter's totally different. She wants this conversation with you, and her boyfriend wants this conversation with you. So it's back to your original point about identifying what the customer is, as in personality wise. It depends on how you handle the objection, to be fair. Because if someone comes up and says, I object because of this, and they're looking to you to advise them, I think sometimes you can be straight talking and say, yeah, I understand where you're coming from. However, the reality is this, this, and this. What do you want to do?
Yeah, call them aliens. You know those people that, like, I hate eye contact, but I've gotten better at it. And they're just like this, and you got to hold it out, because if you break eye contact, you lose trust. Or you had the timid bears that, like, if you look at them too much, they freak out. So you make yourself small and you sort of look away. I used to stop people in the street and then convince them to contribute to something for a few years. And I would always, apart from the aliens, I would stand on an angle to them, because it gives the illusion of space. Because that's the challenge. When you close off space, it can be quite confronting. It's a physical barrier, so it's an emotional barrier. Same thing with door knocking. You got to get them to open the door, because if there's a door between you and them, whether it's a fly door, there's a physical barrier, so there's an emotional barrier. Or if you're sitting down, you sit beside each other, not like, knocking knees like it's a date, but like sort of like diagonal on the table, which I had to learn these things because I don't know if I was a bit autistic or whatever, but communicating with people and being petrified because people scared me, I'd had to learn mirroring and matching. But what that teaches you is just communicate in a way that people can receive it while still being authentic. So what do you think about in terms of identifying what they want, but then also providing them what they need? Juggling those two things. They come and I want health insurance. Yeah, but you need income protection. You know, and how do you manage that juxtaposition?
Hmm. That's quite an interesting one, because obviously you have to do a full analysis of health, debt, what they actually want, job roles, things like that. Because as you know, there's a myriad of ways of protecting somebody, whether it's health or whether it's income. With health, if you said what would the priority be between health and income protection, that's a real difficult one, because that's quite personal to some customers. I've had clients who can't really afford health insurance, so we've taken the excess quite high up, and really they're only interested in the non-pharmac drugs, because their grandparents or their great uncle or a friend of theirs have died and needed the non-pharmac drugs, and found the drug was available to save their lives. They couldn't afford it, and it wasn't supplied by the government, so didn't have enough money, and they died for want of a drug. And I've had two or three of those, and so they've got quite high excess, and all they're interested in is in that coverage for themselves. Goes back to that distress purchase. So with those particular customers, I wouldn't dream of saying, yeah, that's okay, but we need to look at protecting your earnings, because that's not what what is bothering them psychologically. But it's a difficult one. I think as a nation, we're underinsured specifically for income cover, the what ifs. A lot of people think ACC, that's the saviour, which is true. It does cover a lot. They turn down an awful lot, but they do cover an awful lot. But it doesn't cover you if you're ill, or if you've had something wrong with you that they don't deem as an accident, for instance. So there's a lot of people out there walking around thinking they've got, because they're paying ACC through their wages or through, if they're self-employed, through their accountant, they're covered. But if the worst can come to the worst, they'd be sitting in the house they're paying for, struggling to pay the rent with no income coming in because they can't work. So it's a bit like, why do you get your car serviced? So I can get to work, so it doesn't break down. Okay, so it's important to get to work. It's important to keep your finances coming in. And then you've got the other side of your question was the health. Why is it important to get health insurance? Well, I want to be able to use it if I need it so I can get diagnosed quite early from a specialist point of view, for instance, without waiting 6 or 7 months. So it is a toss-up. And it's really understanding where the customer's coming from, because it's quite a blanket, you need this because of this financial reasons. But it's about where the customer is coming from emotionally as well as financially, I suppose, what concerns them. But my own point with, I've got, as you would expect from an insurance advisor, I've got life, trauma, income cover, and medical cover, and specific accident cover as well. I'm a bit clumsy bugger, so I'm waiting for a break a leg and I'll get payout on that. But 2 years ago, I've got private health. I started getting pains in my knees. Played a lot of rugby when I was younger. Didn't have any knee injuries, but obviously caught up with me. Went to the doctors, had a referral, had an X-ray, and then they referred me to a specialist. So I went to the specialist. They gave me an MRI. They said, "Yeah, you needed this trimmed, that trimmed." So then I had the operation on both knees, which I was surprised when I turned up, and woke up 5 hours later. He said, "Right, off you go. No, no crutches." Apparently, I didn't need them. So yeah, that whole, from going to the doctors, it took me a week to see a specialist. From seeing the specialist, the surgeon, I was operated on in 32 days. I said to the doctor at the time, if I go on the public list, how long will it take? She said, I wouldn't even put you on the list because you're not that much pain and I know I look old, but she said you're too young to really push you forward on that. So you wouldn't even get on the list. And I said to the surgeon on the first consult, if you were going to do this on a public purse, how long would it take? He said 18 months, 2 years. When you relay real life stories like that to somebody and they're thinking, well, I'm getting into my 40s, my 50s, and this sort of stuff may happen to me. And do I really want to wait 2-3 years till I'm really in chronic pain to get anything done or fork out? Because my operation on both knees, I think the total bill was something like 27 grand. So do you want to get a loan to pay that to get away the pain, or are you going to sit there and have your life disrupted for 3 years?
Well, it makes sense. It's like, it's tricky. There's a few barriers that I think needs to be overcome in insurances. One, they don't think it'll pay out. The second one is they don't think you've got their best interests at heart, because when I did insurance, I sold funeral insurance, and an obsolete product that I don't recommend now. But 7 years ago, I paid $500. Now I'm an advisor, and I'd call people up that thought they want an iPhone, and I'd convince them to get funeral insurance. So people's experience are, it's not a profession. It's just salesperson trying to make a commission.
Uh-huh.
And then the other thing is that the health sector, it's free. It will look after us. And unless you've actually, come across it yourself or someone in your life has come across it, you don't really know. So what do you actually think about when you go through the call and overcoming that objection of, one, you don't have my best interest at heart, two, it doesn't pay out, and then three, well, it's free. Healthcare's free. Do you think about that in the way you structure what you do, or is it all just overcome because you have positive intent?
You definitely have to have positive intent. I think it's helped the industry that the qualification came in last year. I think a lot of people thought this is too hard to get the qualification and just left the industry. There's also a few people that probably didn't have the best interest on people, should we say, and then couldn't do the qualification because it's quite a high qualification to pass now. Advisor, so they've left the industry. So you have come across people with policies that you're thinking, why? Then I have to explain why, and then I have to explain why they weren't stupid to take that advice, which is quite a tricky balance to have.
Yeah, can you stay on that pocket just quickly? Because I'm having clients and book appointments and they're coming across horrible advice. And it's hard to tell them that it's horrible advice because, you're losing credibility in their eyes. You're just like, or you're saying they're stupid, or you're saying, or, the advice. How do you navigate when you've seen bad advice and explaining that to a client? Like,
It depends on what the advice was, I suppose. I'll point out what the advice means, what they've signed up for, what it covers, and then I point out this is what I would have suggested and why. So at no point do I slag off the previous guy, even though he's probably a bit of a dick and just wanted, I don't know what he wanted, but maybe he didn't know the product. Maybe he thought it was an easier sell. Maybe he was led by the client and didn't have the technique to actually tell them that they're wrong. So sometimes I think I like to think of the best of people and look for the reasons, the positive reasons why they've done what they've done. And it could be that they've come across a personality they couldn't relate to, and the guys just said, I want this and this, get it done. And they've done it, even though it's not best for the customer. So when you see bad advice, doesn't actually mean it's bad advice on purpose.
yeah, you gotta be careful. Yeah, I the old saying like buyers are liars, which is a bit savage. But those people that you would call, they would say, yeah, Ryan, I'm really keen. I'm really keen. Give me a call tomorrow. I'm like, look, I don't need to call you. Like, do you actually want this? Yeah, call me. This is my number. I'll put in my diary now, and then never hear from them again. But it's tricky that it's like that person might not remember the emotional state they were in. They might not be able to acknowledge that, hey, I wasn't very open to it. And then it's quick to judge, be like, oh, yeah, it's bad advice. What was the advisor thinking? But you don't have the context of the situation.
No, you don't. And that's why you have to be really quite careful. So if I do see bad advice, I'll probably ask some questions around that. So at this particular time, tell me what your life was like then, because it might have fundamentally changed. So yeah, I don't think it's productive to slag anyone off that's been there before you, but you definitely need to point out the faults in what the cover will and will not do at the time.
That's smart.
So
it's smart because you essentially what you're doing is they signed up for this policy. You're making it about the policy, not the person. Was it play the ball, not the man, or whatever? Unless it's politics.
Hate the game, not the player.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Because then you're not getting that resistance from them, and it's just facts again. And then you're not making them feel bad. Like there's a closer framework by a guy called Alex Samozi where he goes through a call. He starts with, why are we on the call? What have you tried before? And no matter what they've tried before, you validate them for it's not your fault because. So it's like, it's not your fault that you didn't get it right that time because of this. Like you might not have known this, you might not have done that, blah, blah, blah. So you're not actually making them look stupid, which is important.
Yeah. I think also if you're talking to a customer and they've got a myriad of different products, and you get the impression they don't actually understand what they're covered for. Because a lot of people think that if they've got mortgage protection, for instance, it automatically protects them for redundancy pay, which it doesn't. So then you have to explain that, and they go, I thought we were covered for that for 15 years. So no, this is what it's covered for. Things like life buyback on accelerated covers, that sort of thing. I'm finding a lot now. I should say this. A lot of the ones I'm looking at now have got decent covers, but not the really good add-ons like the trauma buybacks and the life buybacks when they're accelerated into the life policies. And when I explain the benefits of having that, it's, oh yeah, that's really good. So you know the person who spoke to them 5 years ago tried to trim down the cover to fit a budget, or they were frightened of the budget that they thought the customer had and try to make it as cheap as possible. So when I asked the question, can you remember having a chat about this? Oh, no. Doesn't mean they didn't. Doesn't mean they didn't, but it does mean that they don't remember it. It's a fine line between saying you should really know this. But I think as advisors, you've been in the game, you need to accept that you're the guy who's got specialist knowledge, and there's no reason why the customers you've got or the clients you've got should know more than you or know the intricate details of the product. If you're talking to an advisor and you ask them a question and they go, I don't really know that, I need to double check that. If they say that more than a couple of times, I'd be a bit wary on the product knowledge.
Yeah, I think I've called every advisor I could find on the internet. I've called them at least once, and a lot of them don't know those features. To be honest, and some because it's challenge. Most of the time they're trying to convince someone that's not interested, or get their cash flow in the right position where they can get by, because no one really wants to talk to them. And then once they're in front of someone, they need to make the most of it because it's the only appointment they had for that month. What would you like more advisors to know, or more people to know, about the interesting features or myths that are related to insurance?
Honesty, I think. I think there's a couple of myths around honesty. That one, the industry as a whole is dishonest. You mentioned about 10 minutes ago about insurance companies not paying out. I've seen figures, and there's billions, literally billions of pounds, dollars being paid out within all the companies in New Zealand in the last couple of years. I've seen figures from all the top ones, and they're all paying out around about 93 to 95% of claims. And when you drill down to the claims that aren't being paid out, it's normally non-disclosure. So will insurance companies look for reasons not to pay out or not to honour contracts? No, but they will look at your disclosure and make sure that's accurate. So you could say they're looking, but I would rather say they're actually double checking the information they had when they issued the policy in the first place. So I think that's one myth. I don't think any of the insurers, to be honest, are actively looking not to pay out. I think they're looking to make sure they've made the right decision at the time, both that when they put the policy in place and when they're paying out any trauma, any life cover, any health cover as well. So they need to have their facts straight. So that's one myth. The other myth is, I'd like to think that one myth should be debunked, is that people like myself are only after your money to get you. Yes, we get paid. Everyone gets paid by the insurance companies, so we're all free of charge, or should be free of charge to our customers. But there is a feeling sometimes you're only talking to me because you want my money. You're only swapping me from this company to this company because you get paid. If I stay where I am, you won't get paid. I've got 5 or 6 people the last 8 months that didn't like their previous advisor for whatever reason, and they asked me to be their advisor, and I explained I don't make any money whatsoever, and to take you on board is actually cost me my company money. However, for a future relationship, I said yes, and now I'm their broker, and I've made a penny, and it's cost me hours and experience and talking to them. However, it's something I don't mind doing occasionally. From a business point of view, it's nice to have referrals from them, but it's also the case of, well, you're actually being treated quite not great. And I wouldn't say I feel sorry, but I feel that I can do a better job. So I don't mind taking on occasionally those sort of people, but I can't do everybody, obviously, because it's not a good business model to have. And the other part of the myth I debunk is insurance is there. That old saying, I'm sure you've heard it. Insurance is something you want to have but never claim. And most people want to see value for their buck, and for that is I want to claim. So I think you should be having insurances with the view that you'll never claim on it, but it's there just in case.
Yeah, stand up for me. There's a guy done it, I think, maybe 4 decades now, and he views the whole point of the profession as just making sure the claim gets paid. That's essentially what you do. You're a financial lifesaver, and he has this thing where he has this card. It's like an emergency card that he puts in the wallet. So you sign someone up. Here's the emergency card. This is what's in your policy. This is what you can claim for, and this is me. This is who you call. So one, if someone passes away, the card potentially is more accessible. They know who to call. And it also adds as a reminder, on what the point of the cover is. The challenge you face in this industry is you're always going to have non-believers because the majority of your clients don't use it. So do you think about conditioning people to see it as more positive, or adding value outside of the insurance thing so they actually want to talk to you?
Yeah, I think the main thing for me is regular reviews. When you've got a big client base, it's quite hard to have a personal one-to-one review every year. But certainly, I would say the minimum you need to talk to people face to face and have a proper reviews every 2 years. Between that, send an email, send a questionnaire, whatever you want to do, but you need to get agreement with your client before that. You're quite right. It's what you do at claim time that really brings the value as an advisor, because there are people out there that once you've sold the product, that's it. We can't physically put the claim in for anybody, but we can advise and we can be there if it comes back and there's a query or a pushback from the insurance companies. Example, last week, a friend of mine who's not my client, she's going to be my client. Her husband broke his collarbone. She said, we've got mortgage cover, but it's a 13-week wait. So he's going to be back to work in 8 weeks. I said, yeah, but you can claim, because I knew the policy he was on. I said, they've got injury cover within that policy. Just phone them up, so I want to claim for him. So they did, and she phoned back, said, we did what you said, and they said, no, it's 13-week wait. So I said, right, say this to them. And she did, and they sent her, said, yeah, he's got a claim, and they sent her an insurance policy. It's not an insurance policy, a claim form. It's not just take your word for the person on the phone. That's where brokers, really good brokers, advisors come in to their own. They know the product, they know what you claim for, and they're there for when you get pushed back, and they then ask the questions that are relevant. So he's going to get paid out. Obviously very worried not being able to have any income for 2 months. His mortgage is set up for 13 weeks, so 3 months without work, and then he can claim. But because he's got specific injury cover within that mortgage cover, it's a claim. So his collarbone, I think, was times 2, whatever the monthlies was. He's got his 2 months' wages paid for, whereas they didn't think they would have a claim. So it is a case of, if in doubt, if anyone's listening to this, if you think you've got a claim, if in doubt, phone your broker up. So this is what's occurring at the moment. What can I do?
Yeah, I think people underestimate the complexity that's involved. So you look at how many times an insurance company has been brought in the last few decades, and then the rewording is relevant to that year or that time. It can vary. So, for example, I can't remember. I think AIA brought some places, but you've got this old policy wording that they're brought into it, and they might not easily access that policy wording, or they might have preconceived notions on what the actual cover is. They might be like, okay, AIA, I understand that product, that's what they're covered for. And then you send it off to this claims person. Maybe they're new, maybe they're established, they're trying their best, maybe they're completely overwhelmed because hiring people is quite hard at the moment. So just having the motivation to care enough to find the answer, I think that's underrepresented.
Yeah. I think you're entirely right. You're entirely right. I don't think any insurance companies would purposely say no, but occasionally, like that particular conversation, and I would ball that maybe the question they asked was wrong, but then the person, if they said, "Am I covered under this mortgage cover?" the answer would be, "You've got 13 weeks wait," which was the answer they got back. But if they say, "Within this mortgage cover, I've got this, am I covered for this?" was the question she then went back and asked, and the answer is yes. So the person they were speaking to would be a myriad of what you just said. Maybe lack of product knowledge, just listening to the question that was asked, not listening to the whole picture. So yeah, and then when she came back to me, I said, no, I know I'm right, ask this. So it is fundamentally, I don't think you can do my job without having product knowledge. And when you say, oh, that's a fundamental in your job, Jace, I would say yes, but there's 6 or 7 different insurance companies with 6 or 7 different products. And within those 6 or 7 different products, they've got 6 or 7 different versions. They've all got different policy wordings. So I like to pride myself that I know quite a lot of them. There are some people who just concentrate on one insurance company because they feel comfortable doing that. I don't. If you looked at my portfolios across several different insurance companies, and it's always with the intention what's best for the customer, not what's easiest for me, which is sometimes quite hard to do.
Yeah, on that, because a lot of, people might not know you have to do product accreditation where, you have to go to these things and they teach you about policy wording. I couldn't imagine anything more boring.
Yeah.
And you've got 6 different things, 6 different versions. So what's your process to manage that, because you should be in front of people, but you got to understand the contracts. What's your
Mhm.
learning process?
Well, strange enough, I had 3 emails from 3 different insurers yesterday saying your annual assessment is due. Please do this, this, and this. And it's 2 or 3 hours on each one. I find them fairly easy because I keep abreast of some of the changes. So when the questions come up, tend to know the answers. So instead of researching them, I know them. So it's not as long as the 3 hours. Every now and again, insurance companies will send you an update. And it's looking at that update, remembering the update, logging it, say, okay, I need to know this. Back to your point about old policies, there's certain companies now, or most of the insurance companies will have guaranteed wording, which means that if there's any improvements on older policies, and they'd be recent old policies, last 5 or 6 years, they would automatically get the increases in the product. Whereas before they used to circle the product and say, right, that's now finished, this is the new one. And that's when you really need to know the information. And sometimes you look at their old product and it could be from 2004. It could be an old health product, and there's no non-farm act drug coverage whatsoever on that. But you could update it to the new product without underwriting, which give you $20,000 non-farm act product, non-farm act coverage, which is still nothing. So then you start looking around, okay, what's the best product out there at the moment? So the old products, ring-fenced, they don't move, but the new products, most of them, the good, decent insurances have got guaranteed future wording, basically, policy wording. So as they go along, they just add to them, not take away.
Can you explain the alternative to that as well? Like, because, some people are pro that, some people are not. Like, you rig up your insurance to be like, hey, I want this wording to stay the same and not for them to flip it on me.
Oh, no, what they can't do is make it worse for you.
Mm.
So it's a case of There are a couple of insurance companies that have the right to change your policy wording without you having a say in it. To the negative, they can take stuff off you. I'm not going to mention who they are, but there's the others that will only increase your product. They will never take what you've already got. So if a product comes out, or they want to take something off the new product coming out, say I can't think of an example without giving away the company. So say you've got a product and they say, right, okay, from November this year, we're going to take this part off that product. They can't take it off you because you've already got it. So anyone joining after November, they'd have a reduced product. But then on the flip side of that, if they said, we're going to increase this cover, or we're going to add specific injury or whatever, that automatically goes onto your policy. So they can only make your policy better. They can't make it worse.
How do you look for that? Does it say we can only make this better? Do they call it guaranteed wording? Is there a way they?
Guaranteed
And it says
wording.
at the top or in the middle. Where would you look for?
It's in the product document. So it's
Somewhere there.
Load of pages long, and you have a look down. As an advisor, you should know who's
So
doing
just
what.
control F it on the PDF. Guaranteed.
I've never done that. I just read the whole bloody thing. I'm a bit anorak. So yeah, I like doing comparisons. I think as an advisor, you need to know that, because how can I recommend X company over Y company without knowing the difference?
Fair. Cool. Well, on that note, you've done a podcast, mate. So thanks for coming on.
Is that it? Huh. Okay.
Done.